Hello, I'm Matt Galloway, and this is the Current Podcast. On Monday, humans across North America will be gathered outside, equipped with special glasses, looking up at the sky while the moon moves between the Earth and the Sun. How, though, will creatures of the animal kingdom react to the total darkness of an eclipse? A team of experts in animal behavior at North Carolina State University would like to find out. They first tracked over a dozen animals in 2017. They're going to do a follow-up study, this time at a zoo in Texas that lies in the path of totality on Monday. Adam Hartstone-Rose is a biologist and professor of biological sciences at North Carolina State University. Adam, good morning.
Good morning. It's an exciting time.
It certainly is. How does one become a specialist in animal behavior during an eclipse?
Well, that's a funny story because until about 2 months ago, I didn't realize that I was a specialist in this. I had no idea I was regarded as an expert. And that's basically because I've only ever published one paper on it. However, it turns out that that's kind of the most comprehensive study that's been done in almost 100 years. So there was a fantastic study of an eclipse that passed through Canada and New England in 1932. And in basically the intervening 100 years, all of the previous studies have been basically kind of one-off observations of a species here or a species there. And so we were the first group to kind of try to answer some of these questions more systematically.
What did you expect when you started the research?
I actually expected essentially nothing. I did this study basically almost as a study of convenience. I was a professor at the University of South Carolina at the time, and also affiliated with the Riverbanks Zoo and Garden, a fantastic zoo. And both of them are in Columbia, South Carolina, which was one of the few cities directly on the path of totality. Luckily for us, there are way more big cities on the path of totality, including some of Canada's biggest cities this time. But people started asking us at the zoo, what do animals do during eclipses? What was the zoo planning to do? And the answer was, we really didn't think about it. And so we kind of pulled together this study. And I wasn't super excited about eclipses. I'm a biologist. I'm not really interested in the moon and the sun and whatnot. And I also thought the animals were going to have essentially no reaction. And I'm proud to say that I was completely wrong on both counts. The eclipse was mind-blowing and the animals did amazing things.
I was going to say, well, what surprised you about the eclipse? But more importantly, what did you find when it came to the animal behavior in said eclipse?
Yeah, so we found, we basically categorized all behaviors into 4 different categories. About a quarter of the species didn't do anything at all. And so that was kind of interesting in and of itself because it was an amazing day, very ruckus at the zoo. And some of the animals just went about their business completely as normal. However, about 75% of the animals did have a strong reaction. Most of those reactions we categorized as something that we refer to as circadian reaction. So basically, they acted as if the evening and nighttime had fallen. So for instance, some of the animals that moved towards where they are let in for the evening and maybe given their sort of evening meal. And they were kind of curious, why isn't the door open? Where's our food? And then as the sun came back, they moved back to their regular behavior. We also watched one little nocturnal bird, a funny little bird called a tawny frogmouth, that during the day it camouflages as basically a broken tree branch. And at night, it wakes up and goes foraging. And that's exactly what it did during that brief little interlude of the eclipse. However, a lot of species also displayed what we consider anxiety-related behavior. We can't know exactly what's going through an animal's mind, but we've become accustomed to looking for signs of distress in animals. We don't want our pets to be upset. We don't want zoo animals to be upset. And unfortunately, some of the animals seem to kind of freak out a little bit during the eclipse. So for instance, the flamingos, all of the adults gathered the chicks towards the middle of the group as if to protect them. And they were kind of looking up to stay vigilant. Maybe they thought aerial predators were coming or something like that. And the most dramatic behavior, anxiety related, was what we saw with the giraffe. And that was really interesting because prior to our study, somebody had watched giraffes during an eclipse in Africa, so wild giraffes, and observed that they galloped during totality. And I thought that this was likely nonsense. I've spent a lot of time with giraffes in the wild, and they've always basically been calm animals and only ever sort of run when they're startled or being chased by something. And yet we watched the giraffes at the zoo, and to our astonishment, literally they started galloping. And that was something that was seen at another zoo in 2017 at the same time. So that was amazing. And then we saw a couple truly bizarre behaviors that we couldn't categorize into either category.
Oh, do
so
tell.
those were from, so there's this wonderful little ape called a siamang. They're actually the biggest of the gibbon family, the lesser apes. And they make amazingly loud vocalizations, wonderful vocalizations. And we recorded their vocalizations before and after the eclipse for even a couple weeks, so that we can statistically compare them to these really strange vocalizations that they made during the eclipse. And it turns out that they made calls during the eclipse that were significantly different than anything we heard before or since.
Okay, so you have to stop there. I'm going to ask you to make the call. What is it? What did it sound like?
I mean, so it's just amazing. They have this big like throat sac that's almost like a resonance chamber. And it's really remarkable. I could not possibly do them justice.
You could try.
I could try, but I think my wife would be very disappointed in me for doing that. For all of your Canadian listeners, that would be terrible.
Was there anything else? Was there anything else bizarre that you saw?
Yeah, so there was the strangest animal behavior that we saw. Well, actually, I always refer to this as the second strangest animal behavior, was from what we saw from the Galapagos tortoises. So before the eclipse, as the totality was building, they started moving around more rapidly, which was interesting in and of itself because tortoises don't move very rapidly. But then right at the peak of totality, a couple of them started their mating behavior. They were literally breeding during the eclipse, which we have no explanation for. And maybe that was just what was happening with those animals at the time. But honestly, the weirdest behavior at the zoo that day was what the people were doing. People were having such a great time. It was very exuberant. And I expect, the same to happen this time around as well.
What are you going to be doing on Monday then?
On Monday, we're doing two things. So for one thing, I'm taking a large team of my graduate students and lab managers, and we're leading a group of over 40 researchers, basically replicating our study from 2017, but we're doing it at a zoo in Texas, so the Fort Worth Zoo. And we're going to be watching a lot of the same species that we watched last time to try to confirm those behaviors. And we're also going to watch other species that we're super interested in. However, the thing that I'm even more excited about is we're doing a huge participatory science study, a citizen science study where anybody can participate wherever you are in North America. All of North America is going to be under partial eclipse. And so whether you're on the path of totality or not, you can join our project. And we call this the Solar Eclipse Safari Project. It's really easy to find us, solareclipsesafari.org. And our website has all of the instructions on how you can take recordings of animal observations on your phone or tablet, or print out some forms and take your notes, and then how to submit those back to us. And we're hoping to be able to answer some of these broad questions, not just about zoo animals, but we're hoping people will watch animals at farms. We're hoping people will go out into the wilderness and watch deer and squirrels. And I'm even interested in what's happening in people's neighborhoods or watching your dog in your backyard. Nobody's ever published on what so many of these species do. And some people are really curious about what do dogs do during an eclipse.
We just have a couple of minutes left. Why is this important? Why do we need to know and understand how an eclipse affects animals?
It's a great question. And I always give sort of two answers. There's one small answer, which is we always want to know what stresses animals out so that we can hopefully mitigate that, right? We don't want our pets to be upset. We don't want zoo animals to be upset. But the bigger answer is that actually this has no effect on humanity, right? Eclipses are super rare. In any given place, an eclipse happens once every 375 years. So it's literally a once in a lifetime opportunity. However, for this brief moment, all of us are experiencing the same thing collectively. And it's really fun to think about, how do we experience this with our animal brethren as well? What's going through the minds of animals? Something that we all think about, I think, especially if we have pets, we're always thinking, what are they thinking? And this is a great opportunity to reflect during this super powerful and rare opportunity on not just how we are experiencing it collectively as people, but how do animals experience it as well?
I just love the fact that I mean, you were initially very suspicious of all of this. The eclipse is boring. Nothing's going to happen. The animals are, there's no galloping giraffes. And your mind has been blown by all of the stuff that you have seen.
Completely. I was I was really emotionally moved by the experience. It was so exciting. I think I'm now hooked. I'm an eclipse chaser probably for life. But also I think it's a great story of how the best science progresses. I've published over 100 papers, and like consistently the most exciting discoveries that we make, and I think the most exciting discoveries any scientist makes, is when they were completely wrong about what they set out to discover, and they discovered something completely different.
I love it. Good luck on Monday, and I hope wherever you happen to be, the sky is clear. People are looking at the weather apps with great consternation and anticipation. But I hope...
Actually, I mean, it looks like you guys are going to have way better weather than we're going to have in Texas. But hopefully everybody has an amazing experience. And if you are so inclined and you find animals wherever you are, please join us on solareclipsesafari.org and help us answer these questions.
Will do. Adam, thank you.
Thank you.
Adam Hartstone-Rose is a professor of biological sciences at North Carolina State University. He was in Raleigh, North Carolina. We will have further eclipse coverage on Monday. Would be neat if you were out, if you're watching it, like record what's happening. And if you want to send it to us as your reactions unfold, you can. You could email it to thecurrent@cbc.ca with your voice memo app on your phone. Just record, if you're out there looking at this eclipse, how you're experiencing it. We're going to talk more about how people might experience it coming up Monday. But if you do that, send us a note, thecurrent@cbc.ca.